When we think about farming, our minds usually jump to planting seeds, watching things grow, and then the big harvest. But what about what happens after the harvest? That crucial step, the one that happens between the field and your plate, is storage. And as we're about to see, this isn't just about putting food on a shelf. Oh no. It's a huge battle against waste, a powerful tool for economic freedom, and honestly, it's one of the keys to our global food security. So let's just start with a number that's, well, it's pretty staggering. 40%. That's how much of our food is lost after harvest, every single year. Think about that. Almost half of everything we grow is wasted before anyone even gets a chance to eat it. This isn't some small leak in the system, folks. It's a gaping hole, and a huge part of the problem comes down to one thing: bad storage. And if you want to put a price tag on that loss, just look at India. In India alone, we're talking about $14 billion worth of food grains wasted annually. That's enough money and food to feed about a third of the country's poorest people. So this is way more than just spoiled food. It's wasted water, wasted land, lost income for farmers, and a massive drag on the economy. So what in the world is causing all this damage? Well, to figure out how to fix this, we've got to get to know the enemy, right? The moment a fruit or vegetable is picked, it's in a race against time. It's fighting off a whole bunch of invisible forces that are trying to break it down. Let's meet the main culprits. First on the list is something called transpiration. Now, that's just a fancy scientific way of saying water loss. See, fresh produce is mostly water, and as soon as it's picked, it just starts losing that moisture to the air around it. And what do you get? Wilting, shriveling, basically all that crisp freshness just disappears. It's literally drying out right before our eyes. Now, here's a wild thought. Harvested produce is actually still alive. That apple on your counter, it's breathing. And that process, called respiration, is the plant literally eating itself to stay alive. It's burning through its own stored sugars and nutrients. So the longer it sits there respiring, the more of its own flavor and nutrition it uses up, which leads straight to spoilage. And of course, it's not just an internal battle. You've got all the invaders from the outside, too. The wrong temperature or too much humidity can speed up decay like you wouldn't believe. And then come the pests. Insects, rodents, and all those microscopic fungi and molds that look at a pile of harvested grain and see a giant all-you-can-eat buffet. This fight is as old as farming itself. For thousands of years, people have been trying to figure out better ways to protect the harvest. The story of storage is really a story of human ingenuity, evolving from these simple open-air structures to the high-tech controlled environments we have today. And this comparison just shows the evolution perfectly. Over on the left, you've got a traditional yam barn from West Africa. It's a really clever design built for ventilation, but it's still totally exposed to the weather. On the right, you have the idea behind a modern warehouse, a sealed box where you can precisely control everything: the temperature, the humidity, the very air itself. It's a difference between working with unpredictable nature and taking control of it. And it's amazing, really, when you look all over the world, different cultures came up with their own brilliant solutions. You've got mud bins in India, yam barns in West Africa, underground pits, all built with local materials and a deep knowledge of the climate. But they all kind of share the same Achilles heel. They're vulnerable to those enemies we just talked about: the moisture, the insects, and the rodents. So we usually think of storage as just a defensive move, right? Trying to prevent loss. But modern storage is about so much more than that. It's a proactive tool that can completely change a farmer's life, giving them control and opportunities they've never, ever had before. And this whole transformation is basically happening because of two key innovations. One is a surprisingly simple piece of technology. The other is a powerful financial system that turns a farmer's harvest into a bankable asset. It's pretty cool. Okay, let's start with the tech. It's called hermetic storage. Sounds complicated, but the idea is dead simple. You just put your grain in a totally airtight bag. As the grain, and yeah, any tiny insects that hitched a ride, start to breathe, they use up all the oxygen inside the bag and release carbon dioxide. And guess what? Without oxygen, insects die and molds can't grow. It's a brilliant chemical-free way to basically suffocate the problem. And the results? They are absolutely dramatic. I mean, just look at this chart. With the old-school storage methods, the risk of your grain getting ruined is pretty high. With hermetic bags, that risk drops to almost zero. It's a total game changer for protecting the quality and the safety of the food. But hey, saving the grain is only half the battle. The other innovation is all about the money, and this is where things get truly life-changing. See, most small farmers have to sell their crops right after harvest, when everyone is selling and prices are at rock bottom. But what if they didn't have to? What if their stored grain could act like money in the bank? That's the powerful idea behind something called the warehouse receipt system. Here's how it works. A farmer takes their grain to a certified, quality-controlled warehouse. Step 1. They get an official piece of paper, a receipt, that proves they own that grain. Step 2. Now, here's the magic. That piece of paper is now a legal document. They can take it to a bank and use it as collateral to get a loan for their immediate needs. Step 3. And that frees them up to wait and sell their actual grain months later when the prices are much, much higher. It gives them power in the market. And listen, this isn't just some theory. It's happening for real in places like Sindema, Ghana. Before, it was the same old story. Farmers stored grain at home, a lot of it spoiled, and they were forced to sell for cheap. But afterwards, wow, over 2,000 farmers used this system to get almost $600,000 in loans. And get this, with zero defaults. They cut their losses way down and their incomes went way up. That is what empowerment looks like. So as we start to pull all these threads together, it becomes really clear that fixing storage isn't just some small technical problem for farmers. It's a massive strategy for building a future that's more secure, more fair, and more sustainable for all of us. The impact really breaks down into 3 huge wins. First, you're empowering farmers, giving them financial stability and a much better income. Second, you're directly boosting food security by saving a huge chunk of that 40% of food that we're currently just throwing away. And third, and this one might surprise you, it's a massive benefit for the environment. Here's why. When food rots, it releases greenhouse gases like methane. In fact, all the food we lose and waste is responsible for about 8% of all global emissions. That is a huge number. So every bag of grain we save isn't just feeding a family, it's also helping to protect the planet. Good storage is a climate solution hiding in plain sight. Which kind of brings us to the big final question, doesn't it? We live in a world where we constantly hear that we need to grow more food for a growing population, and yet we're already wasting nearly half of what we produce. When you look at it that way, improving the simple, ancient art of storage doesn't just seem like a good idea. It feels like one of the smartest, most powerful things we can do to safeguard our future.